Of
Wow.
course, I'm coming in there in the 1990s but and so there had been an earlier generation, those who had benefited from the civil rights movement and then getting involved in politics in the 60s, 70s, and then rising in the 80s. But then so I was taking advantage of sort of the wake of that sort of early political activism. Um, but then I jumped off, right? Jumped off that train and went to graduate school.
Wow. Um, I moving on into that. Um, what was it like in the process of graduate school, becoming an educator? How do
Well,
you
when I went to graduate school, my intention was to do research, and my training at Irvine was not as a teacher, but as a researcher, right? I
Oh,
mean, so I was getting my PhD, and my goal was to possibly get hired at a university. I did not consider teaching at a teaching institution or at a community college. That wasn't even, I never even considered it when I was in high school, right? Never considered community college, right? And largely it's because of the negative connotation with community colleges
oh,
when I was growing up. And so I went to Irvine with the intention to getting my writing skills down, with getting my research skills down, and preparing me for a job in at the university level.
right.
So, but I ended up teaching courses at part-time at Cal State Northridge, and in the Chicano Studies department, and that's where I really got a feel for teaching, and really that I didn't have a heck of a lot of skills, and I needed to learn a lot. Then the opportunity came pretty quick in 2005. I hadn't even finished my dissertation yet at Cabrillo College, and really I got I don't want to say that I got my butt kicked, but I had a lot to learn in terms of teaching. I was not prepared, sort of, oftentimes for I had in other words, I had such a spectrum of students who were coming into the classroom. I had students who were so prepared, ready to go on to a university, and then I had those students who were completely lost, didn't even know why they were in the classroom. And somehow I'm supposed to teach all of that spectrum within in the same classroom in the semester, and it was tough. And so I had to learn a lot of strategies. And so thank goodness that the college was able to provide all kinds of workshops every semester. You've got workshops in the fall, workshops in the spring, and then other opportunities. And I took as many of those workshops as possible to basically teach me those skills. And of course, I remember also, asking even my wife, how am I supposed to be teaching? Because she was teaching elementary school students, and so it was tough there for a few years, and then I also had to hurry up and turn in my dissertation. Otherwise, because I was hired with the intention of, they gave me 2 years to complete my dissertation, and so now I've got a full-time job, a tenure track job, family, moving to a whole new
Oh
place,
my God.
right? From Southern California to here to
Yeah.
Santa Cruz. And now I've got to complete my dissertation. It was crazy. It
Wow.
was very crazy, very nerve-wracking. So anyway, so that's the teaching experience. So I really had to learn a lot in terms of, how to teach this history,
Yeah.
again, with such a spectrum of students in the classroom. And oftentimes I had very young students, and I had adults. I had returning adults. I had what we call with lifelong learners, right? People who are coming in. And so it was a fascinating sort of,
Yeah.
few years there trying to learn how to teach properly and effectively was quite a journey.
Wow. Building off from that, may I ask what the dissertation was and the subject matter of it?
So when I was applying to graduate school, I was lucky. I was accepted to pretty much all the universities that I applied to. But UC Irvine, at UC Irvine, the person who recruited me was Jeff Garcilaso. So Jeff Garcilaso was I remember him as an undergrad at UC Santa Barbara. He was a graduate student at UC Santa Barbara, and I remember him only because as undergrads, we didn't know what a graduate student was, and let alone a Chicano graduate student. And this guy looked
Yeah.
like one of the lead singers in Los Lobos, and we thought he was the goatee, dark glasses, shirts buttoned up. He was, an incredible personality, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Super smart guy, and but very intimidating, right? To me, he was like an intimidating figure, just super smart. That's what I remember Jeff. And somehow or another, he went his way, I went mine, and we meet up again when I applied at UCI. He had recently been hired at UCI as a young Chicano, in the history department there at UC Irvine. And so he basically, we reconnected. Also, my mentor, Rudy Acuna, right? So the grandfather of Chicano studies was
Wow.
at CSUN, where I was teaching part-time, and so
Mhm.
I would connect with him periodically through my brother, my younger brother, Gabriel Buelna, who I am now collaborating and writing these op-ed pieces for LA Taco. And to several other publications. Because he and my three younger brothers all went to CSUN, to Cal State Northridge. I'm
Yeah.
the only one who went to UC. He recommended that I go to Irvine and to study underneath Jeff. So I basically just obeyed. I said, hey, the grandfather of Chicano politics is telling me to go there. That's where I'm going to go. So basically, I studied under Jeff, and Jeff got me introduced to Ralph and Sylvia Cuaron, who he had already interviewed, but his research was on track workers, so railroad, the railroad industry, railroad workers, Chicanos in that industry, and and so he didn't know how to use Ralph and Sylvia Cuaron, who were in a different trajectory. So he basically said, "Hey, do you have any ideas in terms of what you want to do for your dissertation?" I said, "I have none. What do you have? What do you have for me?" So basically, say, "Hey, look, we need more research on Chicano radical activism." I said, "Okay, I'm in. I don't care." And then so he gave me the Ralph and Sylvia Cuaron and basically said, "Why don't you go interview them, see what they have to say?" And that's it. That's how it all started. So I interviewed Ralph and Sylvia Cuaron, and I ended up getting a story of two individuals who were activists all of their lives, essentially, who were members of the Communist Party, the CPUSA, but were involved in furniture as furniture workers and as activists within the Communist Party, and then turned out to be involved in almost every major, especially for the city of Los Angeles, in major civil rights events. They were just mind blowing, including participation in the blacklisted film "The Salt of the Earth." They had been involved in the Chicano walkouts, as their house was a central hub of activism of their children. Uh, you know, during those walkouts of 1968. And it goes on and on and on. So that it was that interview that opened up a whole world of activism, of radical political activism in the city of Los Angeles, and that actually stretched out beyond. And that's the dissertation. That's the work. So I basically used them as a window into this activism. I was able to grab and to take to focus interviews from different people that knew them. That's how I corroborated everything that they had to say. So it was just I had no intention of doing oral history, none, was not trained in doing that, but I fell into it just simply because it was just so fascinating. And they gave me so many people's names that I was able to find these people. And I found them in the archive. So I just built this whole story around that activism and was able to locate all kinds of all, other activists, other folks, and then revealed that this world was much bigger. And that's my contribution. So that was the dissertation, and then later, around 2016, after the election of Trump, I began the process of turning the dissertation into a book. In 2019, 3 years later, it was published into a book by the University of Arizona Press,
Wow.
and that's the story there.
It's an incredible one, I will say.
Mhm. Hard work.
Um, okay, here's one of the final questions. Um, what do you wish for the future, both for yourself and for the community?
Let me see. Did have some of my notes. So what do I wish? I think that today, and again, like I said, the activism that I'm involved in is it's twofold. So not only am I writing screenplays, so one of the reasons why I'm writing screenplays is one, it's a hell of a lot of fun, right? And but I'm using all of my history to create stories, Chicano content. So part of my frustration is that we are the largest ethnic minority group in the United States, and still Hollywood ignores us. It's like we don't exist, and if we do play roles in Hollywood, it's never as Mexicans, it's always as something else. And so in that frustration, I decided that, you know what, I'm going to build content. Even if it's not sold as a film, I'll turn it into novels, I'll do something. But I'm just taking historical characters, right, and making incredible worlds. So I do science fiction, I do fantasy, and history, and I'm throwing them together. But again, it's as a protest, really protest it, and really being upset that not enough is written for us, and it's not as if we're not smart and we don't have stories. So that's my process there. And then, of course, then doing opinion pieces, and all of this comes out of this Trump era that we've entered, and we've entered now into a world that is really unlike anything I ever would have imagined, and in a sad way, right? So what do I wish for the future? I wish that we could return to a time prior to 2016. Not exactly, though, because many things have been revealed, and I think weaknesses of our democracy have been revealed. The power that we've allowed, for example, a president to have. We've got it wrong, so there's got to be changes to the Constitution. So, what I would hope is that we could return to a time in which we could remember, right? So some of the things that I wrote down here is our goals as a country, our focus. For example, focusing on things like empathy, bring it back, because right now it's now been missing. I mean, Biden brought it back to a certain degree, but now everything was destroyed, thrown out the window, and now we're in a real difficult place here, in which higher education is being attacked. I don't even have to tell you, right? It's the entire structure. Everything is under assault. So I for the future, I would ask the future and the future generations to think about altruism, compassion, right? For uplifting the poor and the huddled masses, to go back to what is said, at the Statue of Liberty, right? To go back to those very basic foundational values. That's what I would hope that we could go back to. And again, think of the country as that beacon of hope.